Kia ora and welcome to another episode, the first episode of season 2 of the Healthcare Leadership Lounge. See, sign of a good holiday, I reckon. I'd actually forgotten what the podcast was called there. So yes, welcome back to the Leadership Lounge, a space for you as a leader in healthcare to take a moment to grab a pause, take a breath and get a fresh perspective on the work that you do. I'm Katie, I'm your host, and I've worked in healthcare for over 30 years, and I work with leaders and their teams to help them manage the demands and the complexity of their work so that you can feel supported and excited and hopeful about the work that you get to do. So here we are, back for season 2. I had a lovely break. It was really quite amazing. Having done that little bit of a podcast at the end of season 1, talking about why it's important to take a break and not checking your emails and all of that kind of stuff, I was really curious how it was going to go for me. And originally I thought I was going to take my laptop and do a bit of stuff, a bit of time just to fiddle about with things. And I thought, I actually don't want to carry it through the airport because it's a long trip. And so the laptop stayed at home, and I kind of just made this intention. I kind of even thought about deleting the LinkedIn app from my phone, which felt like a big thing for me. But I just decided, no, I'm not gonna look at it. I'm actually gonna step away. I need this break. And that's what I did. I opened my email account, but I didn't look at any emails. Does that count? I don't know. And I didn't open LinkedIn, and I had a really, really great break. So now I am back, and my head is buzzing with ideas and all of that kind of stuff. So here we are back into season 2. And before I get into what I came up with for the start of season 2, I just took a look back over the last 24 episodes, kind of that feeling of feeling pretty proud, really, that this thing started as a just get going, that done is better than perfect, and just get going. And really, the topics that were covered was amazing. We've talked about overwhelm and that survival mode, and the how do you sustain yourself, to the how do you get things done, and how do you move from firefighting to being proactive. We talked about how do you get focus and how do you stay committed to the progress that you're making, and how that sometimes that means that you need to go slow in order to go faster. We looked at defining success, how you keep showing up. We looked at the things that you need in terms of the support that you need from an advisory board, how you build trust with people. There was so much in it, so much. And there was one episode that we talked about change, and change kind of, for some reason, and I don't know whether it was the seasons changing or whatever that is, but change has kind of been on my mind. I suppose that's that break I had. I kind of was able to reflect and think, okay, what do I need to change when I get back? What needs to shift? What do I need to do? And so change was in my mind, and I then ended up listening to a podcast. And what's funny is I'm not a big podcast listener, but I did listen to this podcast called the Long Time Academy, and I came across it through the Headspace app, the app I use for meditation. And I can't even explain it. I'm going to do a whole thing about it, but there was one episode in there where this incredible quote came out from Octavia Butler, and it said, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change." And when there is, from a healthcare system and organisational point of view, ongoing change and still this uncertainty as to, okay, so how are we changing? What does this change need to look like? But also from a clinical perspective, to the fact that, of course, things change. I laugh with people when I talk about my clinical experience. When I started off, if you came into hospital with a heart attack, you would be in hospital for over a week. You would spend the first couple of days on bed rest. And now you're pretty much in and out within 24, 48 hours. So of course things change. And I remember this one lesson I went to once, or lecture I went to, and they're talking about change. Oh no one likes change. Leading change is really hard. No one likes change. And he said, so why are do-it-yourself stores so busy? Why, if we don't like change, are places like you go in and you're renovating this and you're changing that? We're all about change. And if you think about you on a personal level, I know I look back in the start of my career, the start of my leadership career, and yes, I've changed since then. Thank goodness. My writing is a great example, and actually probably maybe in a few more episodes, maybe not quite yet, but in the terms of the podcast, I will look back and go, oh my goodness, it's changed so much since the beginning, since I started. So we are meant to change and evolve. And yet when we put change into the work context, then that becomes harder. It's this, how do you get people to do things that they weren't doing before? Behavior change for people is hard. And that makes sense, right? Because if you think about habits and, you want to exercise more or you want to eat less or whatever it is that you want to do, the habits you want to change, that can be hard to put into place. So there is this kind of duality almost around the fact that change is an accepted part of this is the only lasting truth is change, that there is always going to be things in flux and changing movement, and that's the way it is and that's the way it should be. But equally, when it comes to behavior change, there you can hit some barriers and it can be hard. So I was in this space of thinking about change, and I remembered one of the tools that I was taught as a new charge nurse. I went on a course which was around quality improvement. And as part of that course, we all got given a book. And we were really using the change model from John Kotter, which in his book called Leading Change, he talks through these, I think it's 8 stages. And I can remember the first one, which was creating urgency. But there's other things in there like about generating short-term wins and how you develop a vision and strategy. So there's 8 stages in this. Now this came from, I think that when I've double checked, the article was first published around this leading change in this 8-stage model was published in 1995. And so I was getting kind of curious. Okay, so if change is such a big part of what we do as humans, but also a big part of what we need to be conscious of and aware of and involved in as leaders, what else is out there in terms of stuff? So I did a quick search, and then I realised I was in over my head, and oh my goodness, there's so much out there. It's like, okay, that's quite disturbing. So I found this great summary article when we talked through the McKinsey 7S model, the Kubler, I'm going to pronounce half of these wrong, so forgive me, the Kubler-Ross change curve. We have the Kotter's leading change. We have Stephen Covey in the change management model. We have the Kurt Lewin change management model, which is about unfreezing, changing and refreezing. There's the nudge theory. There was Satir change model. There was Murray's 3 levels of resistance and change. There's PDSA or PDCA cycles, which are plan, do, study, act, or plan, do, check, act. And then there was ADKAR, which stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and resourcefulness. She says very confidently, looking at her scribbled notes. So all of a sudden, I'm kind of like, oh my goodness, there is so much out there on change. And in terms of change models, what are you supposed to grab hold of? If you're a new leader or a leader and you know there's all this change, you've either got to implement some change on your team, you've been told to do something, or you want to do something, make something different. What are you supposed to use? Where are you supposed to go to? Particularly at a time when there is very little being delivered in terms of leadership development or training and education because of the just the way that the things are going right now. So you can often be in a job for a while and suddenly find yourself in charge of some change, and you're like, you've never actually had any educational training on that. And to some extent, you're in the job and you're going to have good instincts, you're going to have good intentions, and most of the work and the experiences and the lessons we get come from doing the work. But there is some value and some, credence in the fact that you're going to, if you do some study or if you do some reading, whatever it is in terms of your own development, which is kind of your own change, I suppose, you're going to pick up things. I'm a good, competent facilitator. I've facilitated many workshops for many number of years. And recently I started doing a bit of an online course and reading and listening, watching some videos. And I am learning all these extra tools now and different ideas in different ways. And I'm so excited because I'll get to use these things now. So even when you are in a role that you are doing okay, there is space to learn more. And I think change is one of those ideas that is a useful thing because it is such a common phenomenon that you have to deal with as a leader in healthcare. So this is not going to be a run through of all those models. You'll be really, really glad to know. I guess one of the things I took from looking at all of this, it was kind of like okay, so where are you supposed to start if you're a new leader and you've got all these kind of different tools or models? What are you supposed to look at? What's going to actually help you? And I think it's about taking a bit of a step back and thinking a couple of levels up, really, rather than what model am I going to use? What tools and resources am I going to use? And I think it's just about understanding the process of change. This is where you kind of start. It's kind of like there's no two things that are going to be the same. And in the article I found that had the long list of all the different models, it talked about making sure that the level of change, you're understanding the level of change. Is this personal change? Is this organizational change? Is this team change? What is it that is changing? But also the process. And really you go, we're moving from here, point A, and we're going to here, point B. And so what do you need to do to prepare for that? What are you going to do to actually implement that change? And what's the follow through? How are we going to make sure any change sticks? So it's the process, the very high level view of the process of change. And then the second thing to kind of get your head around is, okay, what are the forces of change? Why are we doing this change? Is this something that you want to do? Is this something that has come to you from your team? Is this something that is being told to you that you've got to do? Or, as we see with clinical practice, how that evolves, we've got some new research. This is best practice. Now we're going to change the way we do this. What are the forces of change? Understanding where it's coming from and what's driving it. And as with all things, and this is what I love, once you understand the change and the motivation for the change, once you've got that, it's about making a plan. Okay, it's kind of like, okay, what are we going to do then? If this is where we're at and we've got to get here, what is going to be the way we're going to do that? So you've got a strategy, a plan to how you're going to do that. And then the next big part is about communication and communicating it. And that's, whether that's through an organization, whether that's just to the team, or whether that's just to one or two people that you're doing it. How are you going to do that? What is that going to look like? And that's, a topic on its own, isn't it, really? Around the different things. But communication is interesting because it's one of those things that you think you've done it, you've explained it, or you've sent an email, or I put up a poster, and you assume that people are going to have taken that on board. And so there's a lot of different elements that come into how we communicate generally, but particularly around change. And so I'm making a note already that, that could be a whole issue on its own. And then the last thing, or the fifth thing in this one, is the preparing for roadblocks. Prepare for the things that are going to go wrong. And I talk a lot when I'm coaching people around this idea of the fear setting exercise, which is an exercise that's come from Tim Ferriss. And it's a really great way of going, okay, what could go wrong here? What's going to go wrong and how could we mitigate that, or how are we going to manage that? And it's a great way of thinking about something when you're either making a decision or putting some change in. So there's that high level view around things when it comes to change. Now, I just flash back to when I was talking about when I was doing this quality improvement course, and I'm a relatively new charge nurse, and I've got a team who have been used to doing things a certain way, and all of a sudden I've got a project and I've got to implement things, and we're working on the Kotter model, and I've got the different steps. But we all got given this book, and I kind of thought, okay, I kind of need everyone to be understanding this in the same way that I do. And thankfully, the book, Our Iceberg is Melting, is a really quick read. It's one of those storytelling things. It's quite quick. It gets the point across visually and quickly, and using penguins. And I thought, okay, I really need to get everyone on board with this. And so this was my big lesson, that whatever model you're using, whatever tool you're using or resource you're using, the people that you're working with that are going to be doing this change with you, they need to be speaking the same language. So what I did was I got 2 of the most senior staff on the ward. I took them on I got them onto the mini quality improvement course so that they understood some of the concepts, so that I would have a couple of champions within the team. So it wasn't all on my shoulders. This felt really important, that I had a couple of other people that understood the process that we were going through. And then what I did was got everybody on the team the book. And that was a whole mission in itself, by the way, but just yay to my tenacity and determination and conviction around, everyone's going to be doing some hard work here. Everyone's going to be taking part in this piece of change. This is one of the ways I'm going to bring people with me. I want everyone to have a copy of this book. And we had a great sort of ceremony when I finally did get them, where we presented these books to everybody. And it became a bit of a catchphrase around which penguin you were. If you've read the book, this will make sense. If not, you're all going to be Googling it. That's fine. So yeah, it brought us together in a number of ways, as well as explaining this concept of change and how we were going to be doing it and the process that we were going to be using. So we're all doing the same thing. Because change is all around and everyone is managing change on an individual level as well as in teams or how they're working, if you're taking part in something that's for a whole team to be doing, or a whole department or a whole organisation, you've got to be really, really clear that you're all talking the same language and that you're all using the same sort of processes, steps. One of the models, the ADKAR model, which in terms, actually, a new thing I learned, it's not actually a complete change model. It's a component of the Prosky methodology. I'm going to have to Google that one later to find out a bit more. But that was a top tip I learned. I thought, okay. So the organisation I was working with, that's what they advocated and shared in their training about change. So it's like, okay, that's what I'm then going to learn, and that's what I'm going to use. So if there is a model or a particular tool that is in use, get on board with that model. Because if there is an organisation commitment to following this particular model, let's all do that. Let's not try and bring in more things that is going to complicate matters or get people working at cross purposes. Now, saying that, I also believe that there are, you can, particularly if you're leading and managing a piece of work, a piece of change within your scope of control, I also believe in going, okay, what's actually going to work here? I'm going to use a bit of this. I mean, the reason why I can remember establish urgency from the John Kotter thing was because you've kind of got to get people's attention around the pain point. Why do we need to do this? So that's always stuck with me, and that's kind of logical to me. And I guess it translates into the ADKAR model of awareness. So they're all much of a muchness, but it's about understanding your context and being able to look at the different tools and going, okay, this is what's going to work here. The other important thing to remember and to notice is, whereabouts are we at this change? So right now, a whole load of change been going on in the healthcare system, and different reorganisation shifts here, structure changes there, let's just change again here. And so coming in with a model to go, let's start at the beginning, isn't going to quite work. You've kind of got to understand, read the room a little bit and go, okay, where are we at? And what element of these different tools is going to help us right now? What's the part that's going to really connect with people so that we can keep moving forward to get to, or to move in the direction of that we want to go in? So there you go. That was kind of I thought, let's talk about change. And then I fell into a big pit of, oh my goodness, there's so much out there. The other top tip, or the other resource for change that I would recommend, is a course from Acumen Academy. I've probably mentioned those in the past. They're a great place to go to get some training, and pretty much most of the courses they offer are free. So it's really cool. And I did a storytelling for change course with them again. So it's a different perspective on change, but it's also connects in with that idea of how do we communicate change, and how do we bring that commitment and everyone being part of this change into it. So that's the other spot I would recommend. As always, there will be all the links to all the things that I have mentioned, the articles that I have found, as well as some quotes on change. What I used to do when I was working as discharge nurse is each week I would put up a different quote in the office windows, because it was around just introducing the idea that change is positive, can be positive. Change is all around us. And just coming back to that quote from Octavia Butler: all that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. Thank you again for tuning in at the start of season 2 of the Leadership Lounge. So we've talked here about why change is a part of a constant thing, whether it's leading yourself through change, you're changing your behaviour, or shifting and changing for a team or an organisation. It's a core component of being a leader in healthcare, and there are tools, resources, ideas, quotes, poems, and all sorts of things everywhere. The idea is to bring in perspective, to understand where you're currently at, be really, really clear about where you're going to, and understand what is going to work in the context for the people and the teams that you are working with. And what are the ways that you can get them on board so that you're all speaking the same language? What are any the resources or the tools, or is there a book? How can you bring them together so that they feel part of this change and that you're all doing this together? There's your ideas on change from the Leadership Lounge. I am Katie, I'm your host, and I will be back next week with another episode of the Leadership Lounge. Take care.